French spies, African sovereignty, and a bold leader fighting to reclaim it all. Today we dive into a story that's shaking up international relations, challenging Western influence, and possibly even rewriting the future of an entire continent. This isn't just about espionage. It's about a nation taking a stand against foreign powers, and the implications go far beyond Burkina Faso. What happens when a country that's long been under the thumb of foreign control suddenly says, "Enough is enough"? What kind of ripple effect could this bold defiance create, not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa? Today, we're talking about Captain Ibrahim Traoré, his arrest of 4 French spies, and the deeper story behind it that could alter the course of history. Chapter 1. A bold arrest. In a shocking move, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's leader since 2022, arrested 4 French spies, an event that sent shockwaves across the globe. Traoré's iron-fisted response wasn't just about neutralizing an espionage threat. It was about sending a message. Burkina Faso will no longer tolerate foreign interference, especially not from its former colonial master, France. For decades, France has maintained a strategic presence in the region under the guise of security cooperation. But as Traoré's arrest shows, many African leaders and citizens are starting to see this for what it really is: a mechanism of control. These spies weren't just caught in a routine intelligence operation. They had sensitive information that could destabilize Burkina Faso's internal security. A plot that, if successful, could plunge the country into chaos. But Traoré didn't just arrest the spies. He's planning to pass a harsh judgment on them, a decision that's raising eyebrows across Africa and the West. What does this mean for Burkina Faso's future? For African sovereignty? Chapter 2. The history of French influence in Africa. To truly understand the significance of this arrest, you have to look at the bigger picture. France's influence in West Africa didn't end with decolonization in the 1960s. Instead, it evolved into something more covert, more subtle. Through economic agreements, military bases, and covert operations, France has managed to maintain its grip on countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. One of the main ways France has justified its continued presence is through its anti-terrorism initiatives in the Sahel region. This area, rich in resources like gold, also holds significant geostrategic importance. But as many African leaders, including Traoré, have pointed out, these initiatives often serve as a smokescreen for continued resource extraction and political manipulation. In Burkina Faso alone, gold mining is a multi-billion-dollar industry. While the country is rich in natural resources, the majority of its wealth has historically benefited foreign powers, with local populations seeing little in return. Traoré's arrest of these French spies isn't just about stopping a security breach. It's about stopping the exploitation of Burkina Faso's resources and the manipulation of its political landscape. Chapter 3. Ibrahim Traoré, following in Sanarras' footsteps. To understand Traoré's motivations, you have to look at Burkina Faso's history, specifically its revolutionary leader, Thomas Sankara. Sankara, who ruled from 1983 until his assassination in 1987, was a staunch critic of Western influence and a fierce advocate for African self-reliance. He famously called for Burkina Faso, and Africa as a whole, to sever the economic and political chains of neo-colonialism. Traoré's actions echo Sankara's legacy. By arresting the spies, Traoré isn't just protecting his country's security, he's symbolically continuing the fight for Burkina Faso's sovereignty that Sankara began. And it's not just Burkina Faso that stands to benefit from this bold move. Many African nations are watching closely, and Traoré's defiance could inspire a new wave of resistance against foreign interference across the continent. The timing is also crucial. Across Africa, nations like Mali, Guinea, and Niger have already begun distancing themselves from France, expelling French troops and diplomats, and seeking new alliances. Chapter 4. What's at stake for France? For France, the arrest of its spies represents a significant challenge. Emmanuel Macron's government has already faced backlash for its handling of relations with African nations, and this incident puts France in a precarious position. How France responds could have serious consequences, both in Africa and domestically. If France retaliates with economic sanctions or covert actions, it risks further alienating African nations and intensifying the anti-French sentiment that's been growing for years. In recent months, France has already been expelled from Mali, and if the fallout from Burkina Faso's actions spreads, it could lose its foothold in the Sahel altogether. But if Macron chooses to let this slide, he risks looking weak on the international stage. France's ongoing involvement in Africa has always been justified as a way to maintain stability in the region and protect its geopolitical interests. If France is seen to be losing control, it could encourage other African nations to follow Burkina Faso's lead and sever their ties with France. Domestically, Macron's political opponents are likely to seize on this incident as further evidence that his foreign policy is failing. France's role in Africa is deeply tied to its national identity as a global power, and any indication that it's losing its influence in its former colonies could have significant repercussions for Macron's leadership. Chapter 5: African Sovereignty on the Rise? Traoré's bold actions have the potential to inspire a new wave of Pan-Africanism, a political movement that promotes the unification of African nations in the fight against external control. Traoré's stance against France is not just a defense of Burkina Faso's sovereignty, it's a rallying cry for all African nations that have long been under the thumb of foreign powers. As more African leaders begin to question the benefits of continued Western involvement, we may be witnessing the beginning of a larger geopolitical shift. Traoré's arrest of the French spies could be the spark that ignites a broader movement across Africa, one that prioritizes African interests and rejects neo-colonialism. But it's not just political leaders who are pushing for change. Grassroots movements across Africa are playing a crucial role in this new wave of resistance. Thanks to the internet and social media, young Africans are more connected and informed than ever before, and they're demanding more from their governments. They're calling out Western nations for their continued interference and pushing for transparency and accountability in their own countries. For these young Africans, Traoré's actions are a powerful symbol of defiance. They see him as a hero standing up to Western powers. And the arrest of the French spies is a tangible example of what's possible when an African leader refuses to bow to foreign influence. Chapter 5: The Domino Effect. But it's not just France that could be affected. Western nations, including the US and the UK, have long maintained a presence in Africa through military bases, economic agreements, and diplomatic channels. If Traoré's actions lead to a broader resistance against Western influence, it could have far-reaching implications for international relations, particularly as African nations begin to explore new alliances with powers like Russia and China. Russia, in particular, has been increasing its presence in Africa, offering military support and economic partnerships as an alternative to Western influence. While this shift could provide African nations with more leverage in their negotiations with the West, it also comes with risks. African nations will need to be careful not to trade one form of dependency for another, ensuring that any new partnerships truly serve their interests. Chapter 6: France's Possible Retaliation. If France chooses to retaliate, they have several options. The most likely first step would be economic sanctions, cutting off aid or trade agreements that Burkina Faso relies on. This would be a way for France to squeeze Burkina Faso's economy without resorting to military intervention, making it difficult for Traoré to govern effectively. Another possibility is diplomatic isolation. France could rally its Western allies to ostracize Burkina Faso in international forums, cutting off its access to international aid and economic partnerships. This would be a way for France to send a message to other African nations: defy us, and you will face consequences. More troubling, however, is the possibility of covert operations. France has a long history of supporting insurgencies and rebellions in countries where their influence is threatened. Could they secretly back internal dissident groups or support a coup to remove Traoré from power? It wouldn't be the first time, and the risk of such actions is very real. But Traoré and his government are well aware of France's playbook. Any overt or covert attempts to destabilize Burkina Faso would likely be met with a fierce response. Additionally, African public sentiment is increasingly anti-French, and heavy-handed tactics could further turn the continent against them. Chapter 7. A turning point. The stakes in Burkina Faso are incredibly high. Traoré's decision to arrest the spies and pass harsh judgment on them has already set a precedent. The real question is how far he's willing to go. Will he imprison them for life? Could there be even harsher penalties on the table? If Traoré opts for severe judgment, it could send shockwaves not just through Burkina Faso, but across Africa and Europe. Other African leaders could see it as a rallying cry to defy former colonial powers, while France and its allies may have to rethink their strategies in the region. This could very well be a turning point in African history. Leaders like Traoré are signaling that they're ready to take control of their destinies. But for this movement to succeed, it needs to spread. If other African nations don't follow suit, Traoré's actions risk being seen as a temporary rebellion rather than the start of a broader Pan-African resistance. What do you think? Will Traoré's defiance inspire other African leaders to rise up against Western influence? Could this be the start of a new era of Pan-Africanism? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to stay updated on this developing story and learn more about Africa's ongoing struggle for sovereignty, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. Stay tuned.